grief. It's an experience every single one of us will face at some point, right? Yet for something so universal, it's often deeply misunderstood. In this explainer, we're going to look at grief a little differently. Not just as a reaction to death, but as a fundamental response to something that's woven into the very fabric of our lives.
So let me ask you a question. If I asked you to define grief, right now, what's the very first thing that pops into your head? For most of us, it's a single, really powerful and often painful idea.
And you know what? You'd be in good company. Just like Claudia, a participant in the discussion we're drawing from, said, our minds immediately go to death. And that's the definition most of us have. But that's only one small piece of a much, much bigger story.
Because grief is actually a response to something that happens to us all the time. Something that is an undeniable, unavoidable part of being alive. Yep. Change. And honestly, when you start to understand grief through this lens, it changes everything.
So let's dive into this first big idea, looking at grief as our natural response to change.
Okay, so here's the bigger, broader definition we'll be using. Grief is the totally natural process we go through anytime something changes so profoundly that things just cannot be the same again. Now, of course, this applies to losing a loved one, but think about it. It also applies to losing a job, a relationship ending, or even letting go of an old version of yourself. The key takeaway here is that it's a natural process, not a problem that needs to be solved. And this poem just illustrates the point so perfectly. I mean, just look at nature. Nothing is permanent. It's all just this constant cycle of life, death, and then rebirth. A ripe piece of fruit is beautiful, sure, but that ripeness, it's really just one stop on a natural journey towards decay, which then in turn fuels new life. Change and loss are just built right into the system. And change itself is a bit like the wind. You can't stop it. It's inevitable. It blows through and it tests everything. Anything that's not secure gets ruffled, maybe even blown away. But what's truly solid, what's meant to last, that remains. So in that way, change doesn't just bring loss. It can also bring a whole lot of clarity.
Now, this is a powerful, kind of counterintuitive idea. We see death as an end, full stop. But in nature, an ending is often the very thing that's required for a new beginning. You can't have growth if something doesn't end first. It reframes death as this necessary doorway to whatever comes next.
Wow, this quote from Herbert, a participant in our source material, just captures that idea perfectly, doesn't it? What can feel like being buried, like it's the absolute end, might actually be a planting. It could be the very condition needed for new growth, for a new life to spring up from the darkness. So if grief is this natural response to change, what does that journey actually look like? Well, as we're about to see, it's a deeply personal path, and it almost never moves in a straight line. Yeah, you can go ahead and forget the whole idea of neat, predictable stages. The path of grief is unique for every single person. It twists, it turns, it doubles back on itself. It's messy. It's got its own rhythm and its own timeline, not ours.
And just as the path is unique, so is how we express it. For some, grief is a quiet, really internal process, something held close and worked through in private. For others, it's loud, it's external, it's a wail that needs to be heard. And here's the most important part. Both are completely and totally valid. One is not more correct than the other. They're just different ways of navigating the same, very human experience.
And this brings us to such a vital point. There is no wrong way to grieve. It's impossible. Why? Because grief is just happening. It's an energy that needs to move, a story that needs to be felt. Our only job, really, is to allow it to happen without judging ourselves for how it looks or feels.
All right, and for our final section, let's look at how we move through this process. How does this experience of profound change actually shape who we become? And is it possible to find meaning in it?
This question really gets to the heart of the struggle, doesn't it? A part of us wants to hang on for dear life to what we had, to the identity we knew. But holding on too tightly can actually block the path to the person we're meant to become next. So much of the journey of grief is really just this slow, difficult process of learning how to let go. Now, this isn't some rigid checklist you have to follow. Think of it more like a map for the journey. It all starts with reframing grief as a response to change. Then we recognize and just allow the process to unfold. We integrate the wisdom we've gained. What did we learn about ourselves, about love, about life? From there, we can start to embrace the new person we are becoming.
And finally, we can find a way to transform that pain into a purpose that guides us forward. And that, right there, is the ultimate potential that's hidden inside of grief. It's not about getting back to who you were. It's about taking the experience of loss, the pain of change, and allowing it to shape you into someone new. Someone who carries the past not as a burden, but as a source of wisdom and strength and purpose. So I'll leave you with this final thought. What could your pain become if you started to see it as a seed?